There are two types of stalking motivations that often get confused. These are intimacy seeking and incompetent suitors. So we are going to try to provide a brief description as well as some comparisons to help you understand better the distinctions between them. First, intimacy seekers are likely to stalk strangers, generally selecting victims of elevated social status or prominence. However, they have a lower incidence of violence compared to other stalkers, but are equally likely to make threats, and they are among the most persistent. Incompetent suitors will stalk strangers who frequently find that by virtue of physical attractiveness and being in the wrong place at the wrong time, they are subject to pursuit from an individual who is impervious to rejection. Victims report crude attempts at courting, often receiving gifts, especially on holidays. Intimacy seekers and incompetent suitors together account for the majority of stranger stalkers. Stalkers may admire them from afar for a while before subjecting them to more overt pursuits. Both intimacy-seeking stalkers and incompetent suitors are attempting to establish a relationship with their target, but the factors which predispose them to stalking are sufficiently different to allow us to distinguish the two types. Intimacy seekers are motivated by the desire to establish or assert a relationship with their victim that could be characterized as a loving or intimate romantic relationship. Intimacy seekers are typically older than other types of stalkers, almost always emerging in the context of social isolation. This is the only type of stalker where women predominate. Research suggests that intimacy seeking is the most persistent form of stalking. Insulated from reality, they pursue their victim with the confidence and hope oblivious to rejection. The satisfaction of being in love can sustain them indefinitely. Occasionally, a rejection will penetrate their defenses, causing a period of despair or even rage. However, they usually reestablish their belief in the future of the relationship. Stalkers who fall into the incompetent suitor category cover a wide range of individuals. All are somewhat socially impaired, particularly in their courting skills. At one end are the intellectually limited, who pursue with insensitivity. At the other are what has been described as extreme caricatures of a typical male, asserting, overbearing egoists. In between are the overeager, poorly socialized. Though men predominate, they can be any gender. Incompetent suitors usually pursue their victim for relatively brief periods. They have the lowest average length of pursuit. However, they have the highest recurrence rate, often selecting new victims.
Let's briefly hit pause. We have an entire video on what you should know about stalking recurrence. We'll link to it at the end, and you can, of course, find it on our YouTube page. Now, back to the video.
Incompetent suitors usually favor approaches over communications. The behavior of the incompetent type can be characterized as failing to abide by the basic social rules governing courtship rituals. Incompetent suitor targets can respond initially with surprise or fear due to the intrusiveness. Incompetent suitors typically make repeated intrusions in inappropriate contexts. There is a wide spectrum of disjunction between the real situation and the stalker's beliefs. At one extreme are those convinced that the target is in love with the stalker, despite any evidence. This may be driven by the greater likelihood of mental illness in the intimacy seeker than in the incompetent suitor. At the other end is the stalker's assertion of their right to begin a relationship with an unwilling party. In between are those who believe they love the target, but know it is not reciprocated, yet with varying convictions, believe eventually they will. What differentiates them is how they push their claims, driven by self-centeredness. What they share is a sense of entitlement, self-centeredness, and a blindness to the wishes of their victim. Remember, stalking is defined as communications and approaches that are unwanted. These intrusions are distressing, or the pursuit could cause distress in a reasonable person. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe.